Hi, everybody. We're going to look at everything in the kitchen sink tonight, but I want you to think about them as all related as being unique resources that libraries have. Um, we're going to talk a little bit about open access journals, institutional repositories, and we're going to talk about archives and special collections just a little bit. So, I want to review scholarly communication. We talked about it in the second or third class, and I want to review that. I want to talk about open access journals and contrast them with journals that you subscribe to. I'm going to talk about institutional repositories, and then I'm going to talk about digitized materials. And in that discussion of digitized materials, we'll talk about archives and special collections. So, one of the first classes we talked about primary, secondary, and tertiary sources, and that those differed by discipline. So, for science, primary sources are data, secondary sources are journal articles and conference proceedings. Tertiary sources are books, and then encyclopedias, etc. But humanities has a different view of primary, secondary, and tertiary sources. And I hope you'll go back and look at those slides. The most important thing about this scholarly communication process that I talked about is that there is review of the materials at every level. So people are saying, yes, this is a good study. Yes, this person knows what they're talking about. There's criticism and review at every level from primary to secondary to tertiary. In the past, that review was done by publishers and people who worked or volunteered for them. So those reviewers were volunteers that were academics in their own right, reviewing the material and saying, yes, this is good material. Digital publishing has changed that because it's cheaper to produce. So people are less worried about whether this is very strong material or not. And people are putting their own opinions out right on the internet through blogs, through Twitter, through self publishing their own books. Digital information is cheap to produce, it's cheap to store, it's cheap to make accessible. Because of that, some of the checks and balances that used to be in the scholarly communication business have been removed. We're going to see somewhat of a different system of checks and balances as we go through this talk tonight. So the first thing I want to talk about is online journals and contrast them with open access journals and also their print equivalents. So when we say that a journal is online, it may be that it has been digitized. I alluded to this fact a little bit, I think, in a previous class, but there is kind of a black hole in some digital online journal access between 1980 and 1990. Um, Most have gone back and been digitized. We'll see an example of that a little bit later on with the New England Journal of Medicine. But um, things didn't go fully online, full text online. Journals didn't go full text online until like the mid 1980s, and there are still where you don't actually get the journal, you get an HTML version of the journal. And that's a good thing to keep in the back of your mind. Many used to be entirely print, but now have print and digital versions, much like newspapers like the New York Times, where you can still get a print copy, but there's an online version. Remember that the online versions are different. There's a lot of value added in the online versions. The New York Times has video clips. They have blogs and Twitter feeds that come from the reporters. This was especially noticeable during the debates. If any of you watch those, you could also monitor the Twitter feeds of New York Times reporters or whatever your favorite newspaper is. Print is still available on some of these, and some people still keep it that way. So, again, this is a picture from Ulrichs. I hope you're all familiar with Ulrichs now, right? This is the New England Journal of Medicine. Look at the many different formats. Print. They produce it on CD-ROM. This is a new version of this. This is probably sent overseas. I'm thinking that this might be why they do it that way. Um, it's online. It's on microform. In case you want to keep it in that particular way. Notice there are different editions, an international edition or not. Okay. So remember, the main thing that I'm thinking here is that this is an online journal, but it had a print version at one point. True open online journals have no print counterpart. They started online. That was when that's where their first editions was online. So many of those are open access, but some are not. Some require subscriptions, and we'll look at those. Three different kinds of open access: gold open access, green open access, and gray. Gold open access is freely available with no embargo. An embargo is imposed so that subscribers can see the material first. So you sometimes see this with newspapers. If you've ever looked for a online obituary of somebody, sometimes it's available in the print subscription, but they haven't they haven't showed it online yet. That's to encourage, of course, print subscribers. Sometimes a fee is charged to the author. This fee is called an article processing fee. We'll see how much those are in a later slide, but who pays that fee? For scientists and other researchers, it's often written into the cost of grants, and some libraries have created funds to help their faculty authors do pay this fee. What's green open access? Green open access permits self-archiving. It's usually created online, and all transactions with the authors is done online. That permitting of self-archiving is done, can be done post the printing. It can be a preprint, like a draft version, and I'll show you an example of my own work that's done this way a little later. Gray is also called toll access. That means you have to pay for it. It's a more traditional model for dissemination. So it's out there, it's online, but you subscribe. And there's two different versions of open access. It can be free, gratis, no price but requires permission. Libri is free and open. So when you sometimes do a search and find an open access journal, it's usually you can click on it and use it with no fee. Here's an example of processing fees. This is from the Journal of the Brazilian Chemical Society, just chosen randomly, but you can see a corresponding author who's a non-member has to pay 1,450 reals. Corresponding authors who are members, and if they've been members longer, it's much cheaper, 290 reals. If you are from a different country, then you have to pay $460, which is quite a few reals at this point in time, at least. Okay, so what this is you're the author, you pay the fees up front, and the users get to use it for free. There's a very important directory of open access journals called the DOAJ. If you publish an open access journal, then you can get your publication listed in this. And I meant to include an example in here, but for now I'll just talk about it, and that is that libraries are getting into the business of being the publishers of open access journals. The University UNCG has about 5 to 10 of these open access journals that they publish for various departments across the campus. So there's one that they publish for the School of Education. Their graduate students can publish in there. There's one called Journal of Learning Spaces, and that is edited by Michael Crumpton, who is on the university staff, UNCG library staff, and also teaches for us occasionally. So libraries are beginning to be the publishing arm for these open access journals. Why? Because they have the IT staff usually, and the expertise to manage these kinds of collections, and work with faculty members to create these. But there are also companies that will do it for you, for a fee, of course, but this can be a way of, very small faculties coming together on a very minor topic. Um, a friend of mine was working with a group that was trying to start this journal on a very narrow topic in religious studies, sort of, I can't remember, it had something to do with the intersection between science and religion. And they're publishing their own journal now. They did it through a company because the library for that particular institution, a very small religious Catholic institution, they just didn't have the wherewithal to do this kind of work. So I want to look at a scientific article for a bit and show you some different things about scholarly communication that are happening now. This is a record from PubMed, which, of course, for those of you who don't know, is an open access database. So you don't pay to use PubMed. It is produced by the National Library of Medicine. It includes a large collection of medical journals from all across the world. So this particular one, it doesn't really matter what it's about. If anybody knows anything about warfarin or whatever, it's a drug that's a blood thinner for people who have problems with clotting. So that's what this article is about. It's in the New England Journal of Medicine. And it was on March 19th, a record was put into PubMed. And it says that this is what's called the DOI. So the DOI is the digital object identifier. You can see that it's a number. It includes that it's the New England Journal of Medicine in the middle there. And this digital object identifier brings us directly to this particular article. It's like a permanent link from wherever you are. So some citation standards are now asking for this DOI when available. Okay. This record also tells us that it's an EPUB ahead of print. This was published online and indexed in PubMed before the print was even available. Here's where the DOI took us, to the New England Journal of Medicine site and this article. You can see, you can click on the abstract, you can look at the full article, you can look at just the references. And we're going to take a closer look at this section called metrics. Article metrics since publication. This particular article has had 29,000, almost 30,000 views. This was as of March 22nd. So this was kind of an important article. People started clicking on this right away. Okay. It doesn't rank in social media. We'll see an example of another article that shows those social media statistics. In the article itself, it refers to data, sort of a data supplement. This is part of the data supplement. Here's a reference to the supplementary appendix. This is the supplementary appendix. Shows how many patients were enrolled, how many were excluded, how many went through the randomization trial. 339 received warfarin, 339 received this other drug. This shows those statistics. This is 1, 2, and 3 days. So it was very, very popular for a little while, and then it was going down. We'll see an example of when those statistics are brought out over a longer view. And these are the countries that looked at the article. It has no, it didn't go out on media. Nobody tweeted about it, and nobody said anything about it. Again, I did these slides like 2 days after the article was released. When I clicked on that DOI today, I no longer had access to it. And I noted that it was published on April 27th, 2017. I showed that UNCG actually has a full subscription to this journal. And when you go here, I'm looking at a different article this time, but you get the abstract and the article and the references, but you also get a list of citing articles. You can look at the media coverage for this particular article. This one's about clopidogrel. Can't remember what that is. And it gives you a rank, comparing it to how important it is to other medical articles that have been covered on social media. Here's a list of the citing articles. A lot of these are things like vascular surgery, etc. This article was published on January 5th, 2017. So it's not as new as the one that I was following earlier. Notice it talks about the DOI. A full subscription to this journal. In fact, that subscription goes back into the 1800s when the New England Journal of Medicine was first published. So one of the things with e-resources that you have to be very careful of is canceling subscriptions to very extremely important journals when they are covered by databases, because the database coverage may not be the same as having a full subscription. PubMed Central has been growing in terms of allowing access to articles and having full text of journals deposited in PubMed Central. That was because Congress decreed that any research that was funded by the federal government, that medical research should be put into PubMed Central. Some journals have put an embargo on it, but within a year, those articles are archived in PubMed Central. It has become a huge library of medical information. You can see there's 1,985 full participation journals, 324 are covered by the NIH portfolio, and almost 4,200 selectively deposit their journal articles. They deposit only the ones that are connected to federal research dollars. So self-archiving by the author is done through repositories. UNCG spearheaded a movement about probably 8 or 9 years ago to create a repository called NC Docs. It includes a number of different UNC institutions: Wilmington, Charlotte, Asheville, App State. Chapel Hill has their own repository. Contributing to the repository is required in some institutions. So sometimes the library is involved. This is Harvard's scholarly digital access to scholarship at Harvard. Okay. And it is maintained by a separate office. It's not under the library's aegis. The point of repositories was to showcase the work that was done in each institution. The self-archiving can be a draft. Sometimes places, journals will allow you to put up an uncorrected proof, but they do not allow you to make a PDF of the article that you've written and just put it in this self-archiving. Here's my NC Docs portfolio. You can see all the different UNC institutions along the top that participate in NC Docs. Notice one of the primary purposes is theses and dissertations. Theses are usually master's level, dissertations are usually PhD level. There are faculty submissions and student submissions and some research data. Okay. So again, in science information, this is a secondary source. So where are the primary sources? Where is the data that underlies the articles that we're talking about here? So that New England Journal of Medicine article had a chart of the data, but where's the actual data? What happened to every participant in that study? Well, that's being housed in what are called data repositories or data depositories. This is one that includes UNC and some other institutions, including UNCG. Here's an example of a list of a data set. Here's here's some data from a study that 2 librarians did on information literacy in incoming transfer students. What if you wanted to go back and quiz that data with a different question? It'd be an interesting um, process to anyway. So meanwhile, in the humanities, in terms of these digital collections, here's a publishing platform for called the Humanities Digital Library. It's an open access platform for publishing scholarly books. Here's the Open Library of Humanities. It's a charitable organization dedicated to publishing open access scholarship with no author-facing article processing charges. We are funded by an international consortium of libraries who have joined us in our mission to make scholarly publishing fairer, more accessible, and rigorously preserved for the digital future. Rigorously preserved. That's an important statement. Here's the Carolina Digital Humanities Initiative. Centered at UNC. So we've been talking about unique resources. Most library collections with unique resources are really only thinking about 2 kinds of collections: their archives and their special collections. Archives are the records produced by an institution. So an archives houses those records that are produced by an institution or other artifacts that are created by the institution. So in a school library, you might have trophies, or you might have awards that were given out, that sort of thing. In a public library, you might only have things like the records of the board, the library board, or you might be the place where the archives of the town are kept. A lot of times those records are kept separately, but sometimes libraries are charged with being the folks who are charged with doing that. Archives are in contrast to special collections. Special collections are unique items that are owned by the library but produced elsewhere. Remember the article that I gave to you about the scrapbooks? The scrapbooks were part of the archives and were digitized. Here's a list of collections in the UNCG libraries. Special collections and university archives are considered one department. I just want to show you a couple of different things. I want to show you these online exhibits, and I want to show you the digitized collections. Notice there's also a link for digital scholarship. That's NC Docs. So the library encompasses all of these unique resources that I've been talking about. They don't have a link on here to their e-journals. I'm going to have to write myself a note to make sure that I show that to you in the next class. So here are the University Archives online exhibits. I chose one of these to kind of show you what an online exhibit looks like. I think it was Campus Views. Here's one of the buildings on campus. With a little, usually a longer introduction that sets the context of the organization. This gives some history. And then this is a slide viewer of different buildings on campus. The digitized collections under UNCG digital collections, you can see some of these are like special collections and some of them are like archives. So this one on UNCG history collections is more like an archive. Whereas this one called Good Medicine, we'll see that that includes both stuff that was archival at UNCG and materials that came from other places in Greensboro. So it's not just UNCG. You can see there are some papers that can be considered archival. Department of Nursing Education records, for instance. Dean of the School of Nursing records. Whereas other parts of the collections are from the Cone Health Medical Library, Greensboro History Museum, Greensboro Public Library. These have all been digitized by UNCG and put into a online collection that is open to everyone. Here's the Callie Mae Shepherd collection. It consists of papers, correspondence, letters, clippings, photographs related to Shepherd's career as a nurse in Greensboro, North Carolina. Here's what the collection looks like. This is a content DM collection. OCLC is the place where content DM collections are housed. Okay. Content DM is a product of OCLC. You can see there's a record for each item here. We're going to look at this one that's, I think it's this one School of Nurses document. This is a certificate of obstetrical nursing from the Margaret Haig Maternity Hospital. This is for Callie Mae Shepherd. And you can see that in the creator section here. And there's a couple of subject headings. It was issued in 1934. Did I have anything else to say about that? I guess not. Just to sum up, unique resources are items that libraries create that are created by their constituents. Institutional repositories contain the materials from students, faculty, etc. from UNCG. Archives are materials that were created by the institution that the library serves. Special collections are things that have been collected because they reflect an important topic about the university. In this case, the library has one of the largest cello music collections in the world. And open access journals. And I hope you saw some of the difficulties with e-resources. We can talk more about that next time. After you do your presentations, I'd also like to talk about government documents. I'm going to put up a reading probably tomorrow. Today is Thursday, tomorrow is Friday. It's going to be a short one, but government documents are extremely important in this particular environment that we're in, and I want to make sure that we cover that. I don't think that's what I put on the syllabus, so this will be a different topic than the syllabus has on it. Okay, see you next time.